We all look worse now.
Oh, I'm 16.
Oh, it looks very good.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It looked better
At
in
least they didn't
color
put you in a
than they
giant
put
frame.
that.
At least they didn't put your picture in a giant frame for a while.
What did they do?
Yeah, yours.
When I started, they didn't have any more of the same frame, so my frame was bigger.
It's gigantic.
All right, we ready? All right, well, let's call our regular monthly meeting to order. The first item of business is to swear in myself.
So Matt, if you could please stand and raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Matt Cheney,
I, Matt Cheney,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Hutchinson Utilities Commissioner
of the office of Hutchinson Utilities Commissioner
for the City of Hutchinson, Minnesota,
for the City of Hutchinson, Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability,
to the best of my judgment and ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome back aboard, Matt.
Thank you. All right. Second item of business is, are there any conflicts of interest that need to be declared by any of the commissioners today?
I have none.
All right, hearing none, we'll move on to item 2 is the commission reorganization. Starting with 2A, the president, Anthony Hansen has agreed to take that spot over. Do we have to formally vote on
There's
this?
a,
Yep, form a
Should
motion.
we have to do a
on that.
motion for all, every single one, or just
As a group.
as a group?
What I would do is I would have a separate motion for each one up to letter F, and then the things under letter F you can just do all together.
I will make a motion to nominate Anthony Hansen as president.
I'll second the
Motion by Don, second by Bob. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? He is approved as president. Item 2B is the vice president. I've decided I would take that role on. Anybody care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to nominate Matt.
Motion by Bob,
Second.
second by Kathy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's also approved. Item 2C is to appoint the secretary. I believe Don said he would
Want to do that?
do that. I would actually, it's okay for me to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to appoint Don as the secretary.
And I'll second the motion.
Motion by Kathy, second by Bob. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So that is approved. Item 2D is to appoint legal counsel.
What are our options?
Every time.
Plenty of them.
Every time.
Or
I have to.
every time.
Every time. No, I'll make a motion to nominate Mark Sabora as legal counsel.
Motion by Don,
I'll second the motion.
second by Bob. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 2D is approved. Item 2E is to appoint recording secretary. I assume Angie would love to fulfill that role again.
I'll make the motion to appoint Angie.
I will second.
Motion by Bob, second by Kathy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 2D, or 2E is approved. Item 2F is to designate depositories for the utility fund.
Are these all the same?
I assume.
Yes, they are all the same.
Okay. I'll make a motion to designate Citizens Bank and Trust, Wells Fargo Advisors, Home State Bank, Morgan Stanley, and Cetera Investment Services as depository institutions for utility funds.
I will second.
Motion by Don, second by Kathy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Item 2F is approved. Item 3 is to approve the consent agenda, approve the minutes and ratify the payment of bills. Anybody have anything they wanted to pull out of that?
I do not.
Questions, comments? Nothing? Would you care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion by Kathy,
I'll second the motion.
second by Bob. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 3, consent agenda is approved. Item 4 is to approve the financial statements. Jared?
Go first. Didn't have a lot of time to prepare with the auditors here, but I thought I'd touch on those combined statement notes, because everything in December always looks goofy when you're comparing year to year. So salaries and benefits last year had a big decrease in December because of the GASB entry where we have to record payers' liabilities. Market was good last year, so the payer liability went down. Still don't have the entry for this year, but I'm guessing it's going to be the opposite this way, the way the market's gone. So it's probably going to increase the liability, which will increase that expense. Obviously, a non-cash doesn't really affect us. It just has to be included. Accrued sick and vacation, also not a cash entry, but we changed the policy with the union in the last union contract where they could carry over more vacation, so that kind of increased that liability this year. And then our investments, interest rates going up. We currently have a lot of CDs and other things, bonds locked in at low interest rates. That causes the value of those to go down. We have to record that drop in value, but we're going to hold them to maturity anyway, so it's really just that entry on the books for that as well. We won't actually see that loss because we'll hold it to get the whole par value later. So that's all I had to mention.
Yeah, and obviously when you look at the mark-to-market adjustment on the investments, obviously it makes our P&L look really bad with just under 1.5 million in reduction in value, which is a little over just under about 10%, roughly 10% of our overall market value. As Jared mentioned, the last time I've seen a mark-to-market adjustment that high was 2008. And I've seen valuations dip that fast, and again, we went through the same in the financial kind of crisis where interest rates really change, and then it really either you invalued or devalued your value. So it's been almost 15 years since I've seen it quite that bad, so it does skew that piece a little bit on that side. On the consumption side of things, I just want to touch on that. On the electric side, we did pretty well for most of the classifications. Obviously, it was a colder year this year. When you look at the gas side, we were up in every class. Hence, you see us up on the all-electric customers because obviously they heat their homes with electricity. So that one had just under an 8% increase. We did have obviously some slowdown. On some of our big customers, probably no shock to you guys with some of the economic things going on. Reduction of the housing market and some of the construction sides have been going down. Obviously, large manufacturing firms are built up inventory now. I said it on a summit call a couple weeks ago where 7 out of the 9 CFOs said that a lot of these manufacturing companies have got their inventory maxed out. They wrapped up after COVID, and then all of a sudden they were full of inventory, and then now, so we've hit the slowdown, and so they've got inventory sitting there, and so until they reduce that and get that inventory out the door to customers, and hopefully, obviously that offsets with demand, they're going to be slowing down and things. So we saw that starting July this year with some of our big customers, and I'm sure you guys have heard different things going around the community that have alluded to that, but we are seeing a significant reduction on that side. So obviously we didn't meet the budget that we typically would with some of that slowdown. I would anticipate some of that probably staying in place through a good portion of this year as well. So the budget that we put together, we may not hit under normal circumstances unless this summer gets really hot, but I would think on the production side of things with usage and load relative to manufacturing and producing goods, I think we'll maybe see a little bit of slowdown there relative to what we typically see. Hopefully that will rebound, obviously, as things move forward on the electric side. And then the gas side, like I mentioned, all the customers are up, so we looked fairly well there. And obviously, if we take some of that mark-to-market adjustment, year-end entry stuff out, that's non-cash related, like Jared mentioned. The gas division's over $2 million plus positive, and so kind of back where they were a couple of years ago. So that side's been looking pretty well. So we'll just kind of monitor things, and obviously when I sent you guys 5-year budget forecasts, I did anticipate I backed down some of the increased loads On the electric side, we talked a little bit about that with just the economic slowdowns. I don't anticipate us seeing significant load growth in a couple of our customers that we anticipated or thought they were going to build out. I think that's going to slow down for a couple of years. So, I've kept basically our load over the next 4 to 5 years basically flat for the most part. And so if we can maintain just the load on that side and the load on the gas side, I think we'll be sitting pretty well from that regard. So, any questions on the financials? For the most part, we did have at this point a reduction in cash balance for the year. So that's the second year in a row where we've had a reduction in cash balance. Obviously, some of the usage has an impact on that. Obviously, we've ramped up projects, as we talked about, and we'll have another year or two of that if you look at the 5-year budget, just to kind of refamiliarize yourself with that. We are heavy loaded on the front end of projects here for the next couple of years, trying to make some improvements in some of our power plants and some of our distribution transmission areas, and then that will kind of level off as we move forward. So I would anticipate if loads are down and revenue is down, but yet we have higher levels of projects than we typically have, we're going to see some reduction in cash or some erosion there. Outside of some of the other things that we've talked about, the LM 6000 and the Hutch substation, those will be kind of outside the norm projects related to 5-year capital, which we've talked about. So we'll be coming back with some of that information on how some of that gets funded as we move forward too. So, but just wanted to note on the balance sheet, we typically look at a lot of the cash. We did have a reduction this year. So,
question on the mark-to-market entry. Does that have any effect on any of our covenants on bonds?
no, the bigger covenants is really obviously they look at our financials, they look at our income statements and say, hey, what's going on there. Certainly, the notes will reflect mark-to-market adjustments and things. They're gonna be seeing that. The rating agencies will be seeing that all over the place.
They should add it back in.
Right. It'll get right. The bigger piece to me is just maybe a question on the cash. Okay, you had a huge mark-to-market adjustment, you had a little erosion in cash. So, what's going on there? So, we have to show in our notes, we have an increase in capital and some of the things that were in the production area. We had a lot of consulting stuff and a lot of those things that were cash-related items that necessarily weren't capitalized projects, that we won't necessarily have all that typically moving forward. But the biggest thing is cash positioning. They want to look at that. Obviously, the income statement does make an impact relative to depreciation, some of those things, but I don't anticipate it making a huge issue for having a huge deal for us moving forward. So,
Okay. Any other questions, comments from the commission? Care to make a motion to approve the financial statements?
So move.
Second.
Motion by Don, second by Kathy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Financial statements are approved. Item 5, open forum. I don't see any new guests. Item 6A, the city administrator.
I've done a whole lot for you guys. Obviously, welcome new council member on our council with Tim Burley in January. And we actually just brought on our new public works director, Mike Stifter. He started last Tuesday. So kind of a new beginnings to the start of the season. That's it.
All right. 6B is divisions. Hi, Dan.
Nothing today, hello? Nothing new from me today.
Okay.
Just wanted to give you a quick update. The voltage regulator project that we did on Unit 1 was installed and everything went well, so Unit 1's back available, so.
Okay.
Starting to approve drawings for the Heartland Corn interconnect station. We went through some yesterday with WSB and their mechanical engineers. Kind of tore them apart, said start over. But then I also have a meeting Friday afternoon with Gary at Heartland Corn to start putting all the agreements together. I'm sure he wants the lowest prices possible, and I want the highest prices possible. So we'll spend all afternoon arguing about that.
Sure.
That's it.
Okay.
Financial audits this week, so auditors have been here. Reminder, I think I mentioned it last month, but we also have a sales tax audit. That's in 2 or 3 weeks, I'm not sure which one, so I should have an update on that next month. That's all I have.
All right. Human Resources, Angie, do you have anything today?
This past month, I've just been working on pay equity report and OSHA reports.
Okay, thank you. Legal, Mark?
Nothing today.
Nothing? 6E is General Manager.
Nothing other than just kind of mention that business update I sent you guys. Obviously, we're in the legislative session now, so that's taking up a bunch of time. I think, as I mentioned to you guys, there'll be a flurry of, climate energy bills, more so than we probably had in the last couple of legislative cycles. So, spending a lot of time talking with legislators. I did send some bullet point information to our local legislators about some of the bills that are being proposed right now and some of the detriments that will not only have on municipal utilities, but just utilities in general. And so I'm going to try to get hopefully a scheduled meeting with both of those individuals sometime in February to kind of go back through some of that information. There's just a lack of understanding of how the energy industry works, and so the more that we can kind of bridge the gap of, how to keep, the grids reliable and how to keep things cost effective for our ratepayers and why that's important, and some of the things we're doing and how those impact our customers, I think the better off some of our legislators will be. There's 60 new legislators down there, so there's a lot of new people, and they're obviously drinking from a fire hose, and so we're going to be challenged with trying to compete with everyone else to get our message across. But things are moving fairly quickly. Obviously, it's Democratic controlled, all three branches down there, and so the governor wants to see some stuff pushed through fairly quickly, and so some of the stuff isn't going to have a lot of teeth to it. A lot of the technical concerns we have about going carbon free and how that impacts grid reliability and what mandates we have on us related to NERC and our RTO, they just don't understand that stuff and really don't want to know really how that stuff works or get bogged down in the details of how it works. So we think the best course will probably be some of the stuff will get passed, and we'll have to come back and re-engage those bills after they get approved and try to make changes and tweaks to really, make sure that the bills are pragmatic in their approach to how things are going to be moving forward. So spending a lot of time on that, and just spending time with some of the other boards I'm on, just different issues coming up and legal things and stuff like that. So, but I'll keep you guys updated on a lot of the stuff that's going on here every month, and if you have questions or if you still have questions on what I sent you, please let me know. So,
Is there any discussion down there as far as, I think when we had that real cold spell and the gas prices spiked on us so much, was there a discussion at one time where they were talking about helping reimburse some of the utilities for that?
they did. Basically, essentially with the municipalities that kind of went by the wayside, a lot of the municipalities, the ones that were in a good financial position, used cash reserves. We tried getting reimbursed for that. That didn't go anywhere. The PUC did allow CenterPoint and Excel to recover some of those dollars over time, not anywhere near what they had requested, so that got essentially pushed back to a more manageable number that the PUC thought was in the customer's best interest. Part of that rationale was that they didn't feel that those investor-owned utilities did enough on the front end to protect against some of those high prices with hedging some of their gas supply and some of their electric supply. So they did get some cost recovery, not as much as they wanted. As far as us, we haven't been able to get that money reimbursed through. So that didn't really go anywhere, even though they recognized the fact that there was some price gouging and some other things going on there. They chose to kind of see how utilities were going to handle that. It's still out there. It's been talked about already at this legislative session. I don't anticipate that going anywhere since we're so far past that now. They're looking at rebate checks and looking at how to spend that other type, the surplus money relative to that. It's down there on the people that are conscious of the energy industry and how rates work with customers, but with this big changeover, that's going to be, I think, the least of people's worries is to bring back old stuff like that. I think there's just not enough education and enough people that have been around long enough down there now to really fight that through committees. They're going to be charged with just new things that they want to have done. So there has been discussion. Storm Uri came up. There has been one with the latest one that came up over December. There's been some initial conversation about that. We had that cold spell over Christmas. Not as much in the MISO market, although we did have some alerts, some markets. But the PJM market on the East Coast, they had a significant issue out there. They couldn't get gas supply out of the wells to meet the demand out there. So there's some investigations and things going on some of that stuff too. So So there is some, again, additional hype or, communication coming forward on some of those things, but to this point, I mean, the big agenda seems to be the carbon-free, how do we move that direction? How do we make sure there's grid reliability? And that seems to be where the focal point is, at least on the energy side of things at the legislature right now. And then the other piece that, I'm constantly hearing is, equality, of living for low-income areas and that type of, kind of philosophy of not only when it comes to energy industry, but how do you make sure that the low-income areas and the heavily populated areas have equality of life, equality of economics, those types of things. So that seems to be in every conversation point, regardless of where the bills that are coming out or the bills that are being proposed, is how do you appeal to the masses in the populated areas to make sure that there's some equality there. So justice and equality, that seems to be a focal point. But I'll keep you guys updated on how things kind of move forward with the legislature. So.
All right. Thank you, Jeremy. Item 7 are policies. It looks like we have some to review, but no changes, correct? All right, thank you, Angie. 8, unfinished business. We have none. Item 9A is to review the annual solar production. Hi, Dave.
Yeah, just want to provide with our first 12-month production of the solar array. We installed that 625 kW solar array back in November of 21, and now we've got our first full year production. We are able to calculate the cost savings on an hourly basis compared to the hourly market pricing. So it generated 1,022,932 kilowatt hours with an actual savings of $52,929. So those are probably, it's producing kind of more better than anticipated. When we purchased the system, we kind of purchased it on a 14% capacity factor and is operating in the last year at 18.7. So all in all, it's doing what it's supposed to do. We had a couple weeks, probably a total of 6 weeks downtime of 2 inverters. One inverter failed back in like February. Took a couple weeks to get that back going. Another one failed in October. Good news there, when it did fail, it was kind of in the off timing, but so we had a little bit of downtime, but they got them back up and running pretty quickly. So just wanted to mention, when you look at the graph I put on there, the left side pricing doesn't quite equal. The reason that is in the graph, in the system, to generate that graph, I have to put an average price. So that's showing an average of 4.7 cents. So that number's a little bit lower than the actual from the previous. So just wanted to point that out so you notice if you have any questions on why that didn't kind of equal out. But other than that, if there's any other questions, it's just more of an update on the production.
So on the graph, like in November and December where it's extremely low, and those just are extremely overcast periods that we never get to see the sun.
That's correct. That's exactly it.
Has the snow been sticking to them, or does the snow come off of them?
This year it's been kind of interesting that these wet snowfalls, they stick for a couple days before they work their way off. We've had these overcast days, our 6th overcast day now, whatever it is, before we see the sun, so it takes a little bit to knock off those wet snowfalls.
Okay.
So it's been kind of, I do notice that. And you can notice in that the middle section of that attachment, where it gives the monthly generation, so you can definitely tell, in the January, February production, that it goes down quite a bit compared to August, June, and July. So that'll give you an idea of what we're looking at in the shoulder in the winter months.
Guess it just really reflects what we all know about Minnesota winter, right?
It's very telling.
And the summers, right? Longer days in the summer, more sunshine.
Right.
There's less daylight.
Interesting.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. Item 9B is to approve awarding the bid to GE for the oil leak repair services on the LM 6000.
Yep, so we only received one responsible bidder, that was from GE. our other bidder was, wouldn't provide the bonds and stuff that we were required them to have, they wouldn't provide. So, in addition, IEM, the consulting firm that has been helping us with this, is recommending that we do several additional service bulletins to be completed on the LM6000 at this time as well, when it's at the depot. Then we decided we're not going to do the hot section at this time per IEM's recommendations, and then we'll just have a more frequent bore scope inspection. They think we're fine until the 50,000 hour mark, and we're a long ways from that. So the total dollar amount reference on the bid documents is $810,624.28. But there may be additional unforeseen costs once the unit is taken out that can't be identified at this point. IEM and HUC will come up or go through contract negotiations and would try to cap those costs at no more than 10% above what, to cap it no more than 10% through change orders. So.
Yeah, we're all familiar with change orders.
Yeah, Mark and I talked about that too, obviously, on this project, you know, and we're not gonna know for sure. I mean, obviously, we're gonna try to hold them to a price, because I think it's important for them as well, because they have to issue a performance bond for some lump sum or some price. So we're gonna try to obviously keep them as down as far as possible, but I think we all have to expect that there may be a change order here or there if.
But this was cheaper than the original one anyways, right? So we're kind of.
Correct. We were originally
running ahead
talking
here.
about $2 million
Yeah.
to $2.5 million.
Right.
The biggest cost, obviously, is the hot section overhaul. That ranged from $1.3 million to $1.8 million. So had we done that, we would have been in that ballpark of what we originally talked about. So the fact
How
that we
many,
don't.
how many hours are on it now?
36,000.
36.
Okay.
So if we continue on with kind of the rate we have been running, that puts us 18 to 20 year mark, so long ways out
If it lasts.
to get us that 50,000 hour mark.
Okay. And the service bulletins, that's 124,000 of that total.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Certainly the caveat is as we do more frequent bore scope inspections, if something starts deteriorating faster than what we had anticipated, you know, that may have to come back to you guys, but at this point,
Yeah.
there's no need for them to do that, so.
Okay.
We currently do a bore scope every year,
Okay.
and they recommend we do it like every 6 months or whatever, so. But the current bore scope, the last bore scope we had didn't show anything alarming. Because they go on with tools and they can get into little cavities and stuff and see wear and tear, and nothing was alarming to them at that time, so.
Okay. So from a procedural standpoint, do we need to approve the inclusion of the 10%, or does that need to come back if that happens?
No, I think at this point we'll approve awarding the bid for the $810,624, because that's really what we'll want them to provide a performance bond for when we go through contract negotiations, and then we'll obviously make it clear that if something is, we're hoping that there is no change orders, but if there is, that will be outside of that scope. And then Mark and I typically talked about that too. The law says that you can go back and require them to change their performance bond if the overall price of the project gets higher, but what we've found out typically in a project like this is you're so far along in kind of finalizing the project that it's probably more administrative work to change performance bonds throughout the time. So if we can keep it, you know, low or the cap low, maybe it's $80,000 or $100,000 more if there's change orders, that the performance bond at the 824 is probably will suffice, because by that time they've performed most of the work, or a big portion of the work has already been complete. So we'd ask you to approve awarding the bid for that dollar amount, and then hopefully we'll come back with the contract in a few weeks to have you guys approve that as well.
All right, any other questions on that? Anybody?
And I'll make a motion to award the bid to GE for the oil leak repair services on the LM6000 in the amount of $810,624.28.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Don, second by Bob. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion is approved. Item 9C is to approve the final contract payment to Caterpillar.
Yep, so this is for the final retainage payment of 1% that has been withheld from CAT until Unit 6 and 7 met the lube oil consumption parameters agreed upon in the original contract. Initially, the units, initial setup of the units did not meet the original lube oil parameters. They rebuilt the units, and then we had to get 2,000 hours or 1,500 hours back on them before they could do the next test. Following the rebuild, Unit 6 and 7 both passed with satisfactory results. So just asking for approval so they can get their last payment.
Those results also did go to HDR, our engineering firm that we had, and they reviewed the results and also obviously sent them the invoice too to make sure that we were being consistent with what we've done over the last 4 years.
Yeah, I was gonna
5
say,
years.
this has been going on for quite a while.
Yeah, I think the first payment was back in 17, 18,
Yeah.
so it's been a long time.
So is this normal?
It's typically not normal, usually, I mean, that's why we put parameters and specifications that you have to meet, because you're dealing with large engines. Sometimes, you know, things could get set on level, or sometimes something fails, and until they meet those requirements, you're not gonna provide final payment, which is typical, holding a retainer back.
But not
On
for
the
this
same.
long, right? I mean,
No, not for this long. Part of it was the oil consumption. They've, I think, tried troubleshooting, you know, the oil consumption and the mist issues for quite a while. They tried different things, and then finally just got down, and or between the two, it just got down where we just have to rebuild those things, because.
Then we had the break-in period anyway.
Right, that
took
was.
a while.
Mhm.
So confidence moving forward. We're good?
Yeah, they've been working well so far.
Night and day difference.
Okay.
I will say this amount's already been booked to fix assets as well, so it's been already being depreciated too for the last couple of years. It's basically on the financial statements.
It's just sitting as a liability on the balance sheet right now.
okay, so no cash effect.
This will be cash for us.
It will. You've depreciated already.
Like, so cash and a liability. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, I guess that sounds good to me. Anybody have any other questions or comments?
Nope.
You care to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the final contract payment to CAT.
Motion by Kathy,
I'll second the
second by Bob. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Item 9D is to approve cogeneration and small power production tariff. Dave.
This is the update, we have to update this rate annually for our cogeneration customers. Basically the rate that will buy that power, any excess power back from them. So the Schedule 1 in the attachment is for our average retail rate for our residential, small general, and large general customers. That's a new calculation using 2022's numbers, so that'll be for, that new rate will be established for 23. And then the avoided cost for Schedule 4 is also needs to be updated for the new year. So these are just the new rates established for the tariff for the cogeneration and small power production.
Going forward, will this always have to be annual?
Every year in
It does?
January, yep, it needs to be updated annually.
It's required by law. These are laws that we have to follow.
Yeah.
And how many of those do we have, those cogenerations?
I'll report that in next month, but right now I believe we have 12 and soon to be 13.
Okay.
All right, any other questions on that topic? Do you care to make a motion to approve that?
I'll make a motion to approve the cogeneration small power production annual tariff filing.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Bob, second by Don. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is approved. Item 9E is to the approval of the pay equity report. Hi, Angie.
So HUC is required to submit a pay equity report every 3 years. The last one that we did was for reporting year 2019, so now I'm doing it for reporting year 2022. Staff is happy to report that HUC is in compliance with the state requirements. The attached report that you have in the packet must be approved by the Hutchinson Utilities Commission Board and submitted to the Minnesota Management and Budget Department. The underpayment ratio value of 195.65 is above the minimum ratio of 80 that is required to be in compliance. So it's just requested that the commission accept and approve the enclosed report before I can submit it to the state.
I noticed there was only one off the chart on that graph.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Any questions on this?
I'm just smiling. No, I don't have any questions. I'm just going, what do they do with their report? They don't respond that, they don't receive or you don't receive confirmation from it, that they received it even, so.
I'll receive confirmation and, approval and saying that it is correct after they're done reviewing it. I don't know how fast that comes.
This summer, probably.
March, June, somewhere around there, yeah.
There is an annual report produced by the state that identifies those utilities or cities that are not in compliance, so that does come out, and it's usually a year behind or whatever,
Okay.
so.
Okay.
So we're in a good
Yeah,
spot.
so we'll see, yep, we're in a good spot, we're above the ratio. Mhm.
All right, wonderful.
Okay.
Would you care to make a motion to approve that?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2023 pay equity report.
I'll second.
Motion by Don, second by Kathy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion is approved. Item 9F is to review end of the year energy summaries.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I put together a few charts based on some of the data that I tracked throughout the year, mostly with our system load and the cost to supply that load. First one is the kind of a combination graph. It's got natural gas price, our all-in price, which is the green line, and then red line would be the MISO real-time price. The reason I put the natural gas on there is you can see there's some correlation between the MISO cost and natural gas price. And this is the last year or two, natural gas prices creeping up, so the MISO prices. The MISO prices, that's power that we buy that we don't get from our base load contract or that we don't generate. So the more we can generate, hopefully we can keep this red line a little lower if we can. I have another graph I didn't include, but over the last 8 years, that the amount of energy we buy from MISO has been trending down, even though our load hasn't really. Our load bounces all up and down, but overall what we've been buying from MISO has been trending down. So that just goes to our generation strategy. Purchasing unit 6 and 7 has helped a lot, and there's a more real-time spot market engines that we can fire up quickly. So that keeps that real-time price down. That's the red line. Another item that's not on this graph is, speaking of the real-time prices, they're up 21% over last year. So that, again, natural gas prices have been driving that up. There's just a lot of natural gas generation in the MISO market. So as natural gas goes up, so does the MISO prices. Thankfully, the natural gas prices have been trending down. In fact, something I was going to mention is we locked up some more gas for generation in summers 2025 and 2026. John just locked that up before the meeting. So we have gas purchase for this summer, next summer, all the way through 26 to hopefully keep this strategy going. The green line, again, you can see it goes back 8-10 years almost, where we've been straddling that $55 per megawatt hour. And that green line is kind of our all-in cost. It's our cost to generate, transmission costs, MISO, other miscellaneous MISO costs. That is the cost of electricity. So you can see we've been holding it pretty flat, which I think has been pretty good considering all the other costs have been creeping up over the last 10 years. And I think, again, it's due to investing in our generation and being able to kind of counteract some of those market forces. If you have any other questions on that graph, otherwise I can continue, but it's kind of a busy graph. It goes back to when MISO started, it was 2005. That's why I kind of have that. And now these are monthly average prices. Daily prices, natural gas, electricity, of course, is very erratic, but this is kind of a smooth monthly average. The next one's a load duration curve, and this basically is an evaluation of our base load contract and how well it fits our load on an hourly basis. This graph doesn't, the shape of the graph doesn't change much year to year because our load is pretty much the same. It may shift up and down, but other than that, the shape is relatively the same. You can see some of the data up above, not a lot changed. The percentages will change based on our load. Our load is down a little bit more, so the percentage of load that we bought from MRES went up a little bit. But other than that, it's pretty much unchanged from year to year. Down below, I also show where we get our energy, our electricity. Missouri River, our base load, 77%. MISO, the real-time prices I talked about, that's about 15%, and then we generate about 8% of our load. So we generated over 40-some thousand megawatt hours again this year, which is another high year. Last year was an all-time high, and this year we came in just a little bit under in 2022. So they've been putting in work down at the plants. The system load graph, again, just that's our load for the city of Hutchinson on a month-by-month basis. You can see at the beginning of the year we started off pretty strong, and then towards the tail end of the year we kind of dipped underneath our 3-year average. And if you remember, as Jeremy said earlier in the meeting, some of our customers are slowing down a little bit, and you can see that in our metering that we're now selling less too. So, and then the next graph is the same data but normalized depending on the number of days in a month, so you can compare month to month, since some of the months you can't directly compare. But it's the same thing. We were above at the beginning of the year, then towards the end of the year we tailed off again. So dipped down towards the end. Other than that, other than the end of the year stuff, it was pretty straightforward. Natural gas prices were high at the beginning of the year, made it a little trickier, but we had some gas locked up already for generation. That helped. We did buy some gas last winter. We didn't buy it this winter, which is good because they're about 3 times what the spot gas is. Of course, we got lucky, I guess you can say, that we didn't buy any, but you always have those little events that will spike, as you can see in that first graph. Those are all those winter events that everybody knows about. Everything went crazy for a couple days or a week in the winters, but other than that, things have been pretty stable, I would say. As stable as they can be in this market industry with commodity prices the way they are.
It's kind of crazy.
But gas prices are tailing down, as John has responsive. That's helped a lot too.
Interesting.
Those are good graphs for you guys to see, just from a picture standpoint of.
Yep.
The base load contract still seems right-sized for our overall use, unless it keeps creeping up, right? But there's not a lot we can do about that. It's a long-term contract, isn't it?
It is. Goes to 2046. Ideally, I'd like to see our loads go up where that becomes less as a percentage of our overall, so that we have more flexibility to do other things, but I just don't think we're in that pattern right now.
I agree with you. I think it'll be a few years before we see some of that production come back.
Yeah, it's a measure of how much risk we want to take as well. Do you want to move that red line down, then now you're going to be either producing or buying more, or you locked up that guaranteed number, relatively guaranteed number. It's so much what level of risk we want to take or you guys want to take, but it seems to be right in the sweet spot right now with the way our load is on average throughout the year on an hourly basis, around 30 megawatts, 25 to 30 megawatts every hour. And it's fairly flat. Of course, the flattest, you want this line as flat as possible, but thankfully we have some industries in town that don't vary their loads too much. That helps flatten that line out, but there's not much we can do about that.
Right.
that helps though with planning and.
All right. Looks good, Dan, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, item 9G is to approve requisition 009411, the Phase 2 cooling tower rebuild in plant number 1.
Yep, so this will be the second phase of the plant one cooling tower. It would be to replace the louver face, which is basically the whole south side of the tower, and then also the stairs from the ground up to the top. So it'd be looking for approval for the rec, $140,574.
The first phase was completed when? When did the first phase get done?
Late fall. Then they had to come back because we had some rubbish on the fan.
How many phases are there?
Potentially this would get up to 4 phases.
Yeah.
This is in the CAP, yeah, I mean, it really hasn't been touched. I don't know, what's the original, 34 years?
It's one of those, it is what it is things, I think.
Yeah. If it's not doing its job, we can't generate, right?
Correct.
So,
Any other questions on this topic? Anybody care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Rec 009411 Phase 2 of cooling tower rebuild plant 1.
Motion by Kathy,
I'll second that motion.
second by Bob. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any disapprove? And the motion is approved. Item 10 is to adjourn. If there's nothing else.
So move.
Motion by Don,
I'll
Second.
second.
second by Kathy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
And hide out in the cellar. By now the fighting will be close at hand. Don't believe the church and state and everything they tell you. Believe